So this will be the first video of our Friday series, which is where I go 100% blind into an author or story that I don't know anything about. For this specific series, I'm going to be going over Brandon Sanderson. Now, I don't really know shit about Brandon Sanderson. All I do know is that a friend of mine really liked him, and another YouTuber that I watched named Daniel Green really seems to mess with him, and I mess with his taste in books, so I decided, fuck it, I'll just go blind into this guy. This series was 100% inspired by someone else by the name of Totally Not Mark. He did this same series for One Piece, and as someone who's a big fan of One Piece, it was really interesting to see someone go through the story and me knowing what happens later on, understand his feelings at specific sections of the story. So ideally, this would be for people that have already read the book, but if you have not, hopefully this is entertaining to you as well. Next week, I'm going to be finishing Elantris. This is actually only the first half of the book. Well, first like 60% of the book. And then next week I'm going to be doing the second half. I'll have a schedule in the description that explains what books I'm going to be doing for Brandon Sanderson. And with that, we'll just begin. So my experience with Elantris can basically be summarized by a Jay-Z quote. He says, "I'm from a city where the church is the flakiest, and my friends have been praying to God for so long that they're atheists." And that epitomizes exactly what Elantris is about. There's a lot of religious undertones and a lot of corruption with religion, which shows the negatives to why, I guess, cult-like behavior is bad. Not saying all religions are cults, but what this book is generally claiming is that, fanatic religion is a problem. And this book epitomizes that in a nutshell. So what Elantris is just a city where people go there and they're treated like gods, or at least they used to be. They start to live forever and all this other weird shit goes on in the city. But for some reason in the last 10 years, Elantris has gone to shit. The city that's boarded up by walls has become almost like a city full of crazed people. So that's where our story begins. We begin with a character getting his ass thrown into Elantris. This guy by the name of Raoden. I don't really know how to say his name, so in my notes I just referred to him as Roadman. Those of you that don't know what a Roadman is, this guy is not a Roadman. Raoden, whatever the fuck his name is. He gets thrown into this city. He's the prince of a city on the outside known as Arelon. And this prince is just woken up there. On the outside they think he's dead. And as soon as we get introduced to him, he meets some guy named Raoden that decides to give him a tour of the city. Now, right away, this is just right away you think this is so shady. This guy wakes up in a city where all these people are supposed to be crazed, and a guy who's fully rational, fully normal, says, "Yo, I'll give you a tour of the city." Everything just looks shady right away. At least that's what I thought when I first got to this section. I was suspicious of Raoden right away, but we'll get to that in the future. So then we get introduced to our second character. This is a multi-perspective book. I generally have a problem with those type of books because if you don't fuck with a specific perspective, the story can go to shit. If you only like 2 perspectives out of 3, 1/3 of the book is shit to you. That's just my personal feeling, but fortunately I didn't have a problem with anyone's perspective in this. So we get introduced to our second character, a girl whose name is Sarene. Sardine without the D. That's just all you gotta know. Sardine without the D. So through her perspective, we're introduced to the fact that this girl was supposed to marry Roadman, the guy from before, Raoden. The day she was supposed to get married, she comes through and it turns out this guy, Roadman, is dead. They're having a funeral for him and she's like, what the fuck is going on here? She's supposed to be a princess and she's marrying into royalty for political reasons. She actually fucked with Roadman because in this world, there's some sort of FaceTime looking thing where there's these 2 balls and you can see each other's face and talk and whatever. They're FaceTiming each other basically. So they FaceTimed each other for bare time and they really understand each other. She actually liked this guy. It wasn't just some sort of political ploy to get together. She actually fucked with the guy. So she shows up in the city and this guy's dead and she's like, what the fuck is going on here? We know, the reader knows that Raoden is actually in the city, which is right in front of the city that Sarene is in. There's a big wall around the city of Elantris, and this city, Arelon, which she came to, is right on the outskirts. We know our boy Roadman is inside Elantris, but Sarene doesn't know that. But she's suspicious of what the fuck is going on, because it just doesn't make sense that some shit like that would happen. She talks to her dad and she's like, I don't want to go home because this is the first time she's felt like she's really had a purpose. He feels like she's actually, responsible for something, because apparently in this city, if you were supposed to get married to someone and someone dies, you still are considered married to them. And so she's royalty in this place. So she's like, I finally am someone, so I can start, doing things. I can start living a life that means something, rather than going back home and just, being her normal self. So she decides she's gonna stay in the city. So then we get introduced to our third perspective. Now, this guy's name is fucking hard to pronounce, so we're just gonna call him the priest. His name is like, I'll put his name right up here. I don't know how to pronounce that shit. And if you know how to pronounce that shit, good for you. So this guy is a priest, okay? And now we start to get introduced to the religious aspect of the city, of this world, really. This priest comes through and he's told that if he doesn't convert the city to his religion, his boys, all the other priests are gonna come through and fuck the city up. So he needs to convert the city in order to save it. Through his perspective, we see him get to the city, and all we know is that this guy has to convert the city, otherwise they're fucked. So those are our three perspectives: the roadman, Sardine, and the priest. Out of these three perspectives, the first one that I enjoyed the most out of these three was Sardine. We'll see as we get through this series that her perspective was always the most vigorous, to say the least. There was always some shit happening that was interesting. It wasn't just shit happening. Versus Roadman, shit's happening and I just wasn't interested in it. But we'll get to that right now. The second chapter of this story with Roadman, we're just giving this tour by Galadin. We find out in the city of Elantris, there's three gangs. There's one that's run by a bald girl named Karada, I think. There's one that's run by some smart man, and there's another one that's run by some other guy. Even in my notes, I don't even know who the fuck the other third gang leader was. But that's why I thought this section was really boring. It just seemed like an info dump. We're just shown around the city, which normally you'd be interested in, but we just realized, we're just told a lot of shit that just wasn't really easily digestible. The most interesting thing about this chapter, though, was that we see one of the gang leaders, this Karada girl, who robbed some man for their food when they got thrown into the city. Along with that, we get to see that the magic in the city isn't actually gone. It's just not really used anymore. Some people know how to use it, but it's not really known how this magic works. But we're told previously that the magic in the city is dead. That's all that really happened with Roadman. Not a really interesting chapter, but we'll get to him later. Sardine, on the other hand, we finally see an interaction between one of these three main characters. Sardine interacts with the priest, and she sees the priest trying to convert the king, but the king basically knives him. He tells him, fuck off, I don't really care about your religion. And Sardine's like, yo, this is fucked. Like, she can tell something bad's gonna happen. As a result of that, we start to see the, motives behind all of these characters starting to merge. Sardine understands this priest is trying to fuck with the city, so she thinks it's right for her to prevent this guy from doing his shit. Then we get shown the priest's perspective. Again, the priest tries to convert the king. Obviously, we've seen it. Along with that, with Sardine, we finally get a very wholesome moment in this story. Sardine eats dinner with her uncle, some guy named Kin. This uncle is very, very close to Sardine. It's a very peaceful moment where it feels like there hasn't been a really peaceful moment. And this dinner with her uncle and her uncle's family was very peaceful. Kids are making fun of her because she's tall as fuck. By the way, apparently she looks like Shaq, height-wise. Sardine monologues and says she actually feels like her tension has been disapparating, which is very, very good. You can tell, just imagine from this girl's perspective. She goes to marry some guy she doesn't even really know, kinda does. Guy's apparently dead. She's in a city where she doesn't know shit about shit. She finally sees a familiar face. So you can imagine what type of tension relieving that shit would do for you. Then we get shown the priest chapter again, and the priest explains that the best way to get rid of a city or to convert a city is give them something to hate, and that's where his chapter ends. It's very short chapters with the priest. Not much is happening. We just start to see these puzzle pieces start to come together, where he's trying really hard to convert this group, because if he doesn't, the city's fucked. In the Roadman's chapter now, we get introduced to his real goal for this first section of the book. He's trying to make his own gang in Elantris. There's the three gangs before that we've seen. He's trying to make his fourth gang, and he starts studying all this magic, and in studying this magic, somehow a conversation breaks out between the main character and Galadin. Galadin was that tour guide I was telling you about earlier, the guy who I was suspicious as fuck about. Galadin tells him that before Elantris, he was a farmer. That sounds like complete bullshit to me, at least. This guy is the only, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't check out that this guy would be a farmer. And even Roadman was like, what the fuck? This guy's definitely not a farmer. But Roadman reveals that he was a prince on the outside, and he wants to keep it a secret, because if people know that he's a prince, him trying to make this gang becomes a problem, because they'll think, fuck this guy. He's a prince on the outside and he's trying to lead the people inside. So that's all that happens. We get introduced to his problem. He's going to make a gang in the city. Sardine, on the other hand, is in Arelon, right outside, and she starts to see what the problem is with the city. In Arelon, the city that Roadman was a prince of, in the city, money runs everything. If you have money, you have status, and if you don't have money, you're not shit. And the king is only king because he's got bread. It's for no other reason other than the fact that this guy's got money. So because of that, we see what the potential problems are going to be. Or at least I thought the priest was going to use that to his advantage and turn the poor people against the rich people. It just makes sense because previously he mentioned, you know, to get people to revolt, all you need to do is give them the right person to hate. And what better person to hate than the rich if you're a poor person? We then get to see Sarene have another interaction with our priest. On the walls of Elantris, he's preaching about, you know, fuck these Elantrians. They're, you know, heretics and they're fucked up. Sarene and the priest have a back and forth, and Sarene basically ends up proving him wrong in what he was arguing. Before he leaves, the priest says, yo, you're fucking with the wrong people, and if you keep fucking around, you're gonna get your ass clapped. And Sarene says, fuck you, and that's exactly what happens. Sarene basically declares war on this priest that's trying to convert the city. She doesn't even understand that this guy is trying to convert everyone for their sake, because if he doesn't, his boys back home are gonna come through and fuck the city up. We know that as a reader, but she doesn't know that. In the priest chapter, we just see him throw a little bit of a gang meeting, I guess, with all these other people that are trying to use this religion to capitalize. One such man is a guy named Trelly, who's promised the throne. The priest tells him, you got money, you got power, you got status. If you fuck with me, I'll make you king. And obviously, like the idiot this guy is, he hops on the bandwagon just to get political power in the ship. Then we get to another boring roadman chapter where all he's doing is recruiting mans. And that's basically all that happens in this chapter. He's just starting to get the people that get thrown into Elantris and give them roles to do. There's not really much happening with Roadman, which is a bit dissatisfying, but that doesn't stay like that forever. This is actually the last chapter where it's very, very boring. Then we get Sardine again. Now with Sardine is a princess now. So because of that, she has clout. And as a result of that clout, she gets her uncle to throw a gang meeting as well and tells these mans that she's planning on becoming the queen, to say the least. She's planning on getting in the way of this priest because she feels like this priest is going to destroy the city. So she tells these mans, look, I'm going to be the prince, I'm the princess right now, I'm going to be the queen, fuck with me and I'll give you some shit later on, but you just gotta fuck with me. And these mans all fuck with her. And these are all her uncle's boys, all these people with money and political power. She realizes that balls have been being thrown and she hasn't gone to a single one. So she says, fuck it, I'm gonna start going to these balls and get in the pants of all these mans. Get all the clout that she needs to, you know, be someone big in the future. Before that though, one person tells her that she has to do something called a widow's trial. Because her spouse is dead, she has to perform an act which shows her love for that man. She doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. She doesn't even know if she loves this man because, you know, they were only FaceTime. It wasn't even a serious relationship. Long distance shit. But she says she'll figure some shit out. That's all she needs to do. Then we get another short chapter from the priest. The priest calls his OG. His OG is some guy named Warren, who's like the head priest or whatever. And he tells this Warren guy, like, yo, fuck up this guy's shipments, the king's shipments, because if you do that, he'll be broke. And as a result, he'll be able to capitalize off that shit. Because money is power, money is status in this city. And I'm assuming this Warren guy is much more of a bigger villain in the second half of the story. But for this specific section, it was interesting to see who I'm assuming will be the head villain later on. Because I doubt we'd be shown the perspective of the priest if the priest was really villainous. You know what I mean? So now we start to see what my personal problem is with this story. It's just a whole lot of convenience with Roadman. Things just conveniently work out in his favor. It's like, this guy's got the luck of like the chosen one or some shit. I'm pretty sure this kid is God based off how lucky this guy is. The thing is with him, suddenly he gets approached by Karada, that bald chick that was robbing people in the city, one of the other gang leaders. And Roadman tells her, yo, I can get us out of the city for a day because this is what she wants. Apparently, I don't remember this ever being mentioned, but he proposes that if he takes her out to the city, she won't fuck him up. And she agrees. Somehow, our boy Raoden knew that there was an underground passage that led to the river on the outside. And because in the city, you can't die or you can't physically, or you're just immune to a lot of shit. Apparently they can hold their breaths underwater for a long period of time. So they get under the city through the wall and they come out on the other side to Arelon. Karada, this bald chick, all she wanted to do when she got out was put a letter next to her daughter's bedside. She just wanted to say what really happened, because apparently when you get thrown into Elantris, it happens so quick that you don't even know what happened. So one day the mom was there and then the next day the mom was gone. The daughter never really got that moment to really, you know, say bye to the mom. So she just wrote a letter saying and what really happened to the daughter. They get back into Elantris and Karada says she knows who this kid is, Roadman. She knows this guy's a prince because her husband used to serve the guards. And he tells her that he plans on uniting Elantris. And just like that, she joins him. It just doesn't make sense to me, really. like, it kind of makes sense, but it was just so convenient that this girl, who's one of the gang leaders in the city, just decides to join this guy for no, like, for a reason, but it wasn't a good enough reason for me. It's just like, you know, boom, I see you did some good shit for me, let me join you type thing. Then Kurata shows the roadman, what she's been hiding and why she's been robbing all these mans for food. Turns out she's been robbing people because in the basement of her palace, this area that she has, there's children, and she's been feeding the children, and it gave her and her like conglomerates like a purpose, really. So Roadman proposes that they start farming and turning this city into a real city rather than this dead wasteland, really. She agrees to it, and just like that, he gets one of the gang leaders under his belt. I like this chapter, and I didn't like it at the same time. I really liked that they humanized someone who we didn't really know much about, this Kurata girl, and it humanized her in a way that was very, you know, warm. We see a mother basically lose their kid, and her only goal was to get out and give a letter to the kid. It's very beautiful, to say the least, and the problem with this chapter is the roadman. The roadman over here just conveniently gets one of the OGs in the city under his belt, and I just didn't really fuck with that. It just seems so convenient that this guy just fucks around and gets one of the most important people in the city to follow under him. But I digress. Sarene starts going to the balls, and she realizes how behind she really is. She realizes this Torelli guy, who's with the priest, has been fucking around with all these mans at the ball, and he's getting everyone together. He's got his own clique, and so she says she's already so far behind, she needs to start stepping her game up. So we see her talk to a bunch of people, and this chapter ends with her proposing that they train the females to use fencing. To do fencing. In the city, weapons are bad, so it's kind of a taboo to be training with weapons, but she says it's just for sport, and because she's the princess of the city now, it works out. The ball ends up getting cut short though, because we find out that someone had snuck into the castle. We know, the reader knows this is Roadman, but to the characters in the city, they don't know shit. And I thought that was, I really like that aspect of this book, where we know more than the characters, and we see these puzzle pieces start to form together. So then we get to the priest chapter again, and in this priest chapter, we see a bit of his internal life, really, through monologues. Turns out the last city this guy went to, he fucking destroyed the whole thing by going too far with inciting this hate that he's talking about. Turns out somehow, some way, this whole city turned into a war zone with each other, and they fucking killed each other. And just like that, a kingdom basically disappeared. This priest was responsible for that, and he feels guilty because obviously he's responsible for so much shit going wrong. That's when we start to see that this guy is not really all for his religion. He's just there because he's there. But despite that, for some reason, he still chose to stick with this religion. I don't really know much about why yet, but it'd be interesting to see later on. This guy, our priest basically goes to the guards who are guarding Elantris, and he knows that the person that snuck out was an Elantrian. I'm not sure how he knew that, but somehow he knows that. He tells this person, you know, he tells the guards that if they ever find an Elantrian, he'll give them a shit ton of money if he brings that Elantrian to him. They agree to it, and we start to see that it's not the poor and the rich that he's trying to turn each other against. He's trying to turn these people against the Elantrians, the people in this wall. And if he can get them to hate these people that they don't know, a lot of problems will occur. So we get another Roadman chapter, and in this chapter, the Roadman and Galadin are talking, and Galadin reveals that his homeland was the city that this priest fucked up, Duladel. This city used to be his home, and it got destroyed because of this priest that we see the perspective of. He apparently had turned the whole city against each other, like I said before, and they fucked each other over. Galadin, our tour guide that I'm suspicious of, he was a farmer in that land, allegedly, and as a result, he feels disheveled because of it, that his people are basically fucked. Roadman explains something that epitomizes to me what this story is all about. He explains that his goal was to give people purposes, to give people purpose in the city. If you don't really know what you're doing or why you're doing what you're doing, you won't do shit. You'll just be disheveled. You'll be blank, really. So he says, to get these people on his side, he just needed to give them a purpose. And Galadin now has a purpose. Fuck his history, focus on the now. That problem applies to the priest previously, because the priest seems to be losing his purpose. He seems to not really know why he's doing what he's doing, and as a result, he's starting to second guess himself bare. So this concept to me epitomizes what this story is about. Nihilism, and how when you live futility, when you live a futile life, you won't be happy. We're the mother. So now we see Sardine's perspective again, and in Sardine's perspective, she's still considering what to do with her widow's trial, where she has to do something to prove her love for her now dead husband. So she decides, fuck it, I'm just gonna bring food into Elantris. Everyone says that's not gonna work out because she needs the king's perspective. But she says, fuck all that, I'm the king's daughter, I'm the princess, so fuck all that, I'm good. We then see her FaceTime her dad, and it turns out that Sardine knows that Sardine knows the priest called her boys to fuck up the king's shipments to make him broke. So Sarene calls her dad, who's also a king, and says, yo, fuck with the king here, because if you don't, the city's fucked. Because if the king loses money, someone else is going to be put into power and the city's going to go to shit. So she FaceTimes her dad and says, yo, send that check through. And he says if this is what the daughter wants, boom, she'll do it. Then the priest chapter, we start to see another big problem for me. This hate that he talked about, which destroyed the whole city before, he's still using that to get these people to hate a group. He's convincing these people that Elantrians are fucked. And by doing that, he brings in a fucking crazy ass Elantrian who's gone insane and says, yo, fuck this guy's fucked. This is the devil, all this other shit. But if you worship my religion, you know, you're safe. This is when we get introduced, we really start to see his minion, this guy named Olaf. This is when we start to see the problem with the priest, and we get introduced to his minion, this guy named Dilloff, who's a total piece of shit. Apparently this guy, the priest brings in an Elantrian, and he shows this guy who's disheveled and fucked up and crazy, and he's like, look, this is the devil, and if you worship my religion, you'll be safe. But Dilloff starts inciting so much of a riot that they decide to kill this Elantrian. Hrathen explains, the priest explains that this hate that you're building is gonna fuck you over in the end. You're gonna incite too much of a hate and it's gonna swallow you up whole. Dilloff says, I don't give a flying fuck. I'll do what I want, basically. But he decides, okay, now he has to kill this Elantrian, and he feels guilty doing it, the priest. We start to see where this problem is going to go awry and why this priest is going to get fucked over in the end. Right after this meeting, he decides to call some other one of his boys, and he asks for poison. His boy says, yo, I'll send the poison, but it'll be there in like 2 weeks. This guy doesn't have Amazon Prime. He's sending the poison, get him in 2 weeks, and we start to see what he's planning on doing. I thought he was going to use his poison to kill Dilloff, because this guy's fucked. This guy is slowly starting to ruin everything Hrathen's trying to do, and it can go really wrong. So I thought he was trying to kill this man. And we see that he's ordering this poison. He's probably going to use it on this kid. Sarene tells the king now, the roadman is having a monologue now, and he's explaining that now he's managed to give everyone a purpose. He feels purposeless though. He feels like he's not really doing much. We then get shown, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what the fuck happened for the rest of this chapter. All I do know is somehow one of the other OGs in the city, remember there was 3 gang leaders, one of the other OGs in the city gets under his belt. I don't know how the fuck that happened. All I understood was they attacked him, he fended them off, and he said, yo, join me, and suddenly this guy joined him. I'm not sure what the fuck happened here. But again, this explains my problem with Roadman's perspective. It just seems like everything's so convenient. This guy just manages to get all the right moves done to get all the right people on his side. It was okay. It is what it is. There is going to be some convenience in stories, but I feel like this was just a bit too overkill. I could be wrong though, because honestly, this chapter, I reread it and I still was confused, which is the same thing that's going to happen in another Roadman chapter that's coming up. But pardon me if I'm wrong, I just thought that this was very convenient. Then we get shown Sarene again. Sarene just tells the king, like, look, if you let me feed the people of Elantris, I'll get you this deal with my dad and you won't be broke for this tax season. He says, do whatever you want, just get me that money. And that's how the chapter ends. So we now know that she's going to be feeding the Elantrians, which we can see a potential problem with because Roadman has basically united Elantris. And if things go wrong with the food that they're bringing in or gifts that they're bringing in, shit's just gonna go south for the whole city. We then see a monologue with Hrathen, and this monologue was really, really good, where he's reflecting on why he doesn't really feel like he has ambition anymore. He's standing at the wall of Elantris and he's looking down, and another one of the religious men, one of the people who worship another religion, comes up to him and he's like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you don't even believe in this shit, and why is your belief system wavering? Hrathen tells him to fuck off, and he spends the whole night on the wall of Elantris reflecting on why he's lost his drive for it, and he doesn't really know the answer. But we start to see like how internally depraved he's becoming, or he has become, and I really like this chapter. I think these monologue or introspective chapters where you really get to see what these characters really are really important for the story, and there's just not enough of this with Roadman, personally. The ones that I have seen, I just didn't think they were good enough. There was one really good one in the chapter I just mentioned where he reflects on why he feels like he's given so many people a purpose, but he feels empty almost. That was a good monologue, but there's just not enough of what the priest and Sarene have, and that's why I didn't really fuck with Roadman, but hopefully that changes for the second half. And now we get to the third OG in this Elantris city. Roadman is sneaking around and somehow he conveniently stumbles upon, may I add, this other OG, which turns out to be a little girl. Somehow a little girl has managed to create a religion around her. I'm pretty sure Brandon Sanderson doesn't fuck with religion. I don't know, but like, it just seems like that from this. That's fucking hilarious. Some random girl just made a religion about herself and all these dumbasses are following her, but whatever. It also turns turns out, conveniently, Roadman manages to recognize this girl in a city where apparently everyone becomes disheveled and unrecognizable. I thought that was pretty convenient. Turns out this girl is the daughter of someone on the outside world who was physically bald, so the guy just said fuck her and threw her into Elantris. So I don't know, man. Either way, just really convenient now that we've seen the other OG. It just so happens to be someone that the main character knows. I don't know. The convenience is pretty ridiculous. So then we get to see, from his perspective, Sarene. Sarene comes into Elantris to do her widow's trial. And what she's doing is she's deciding to feed the whole city. Somehow, our main character, Roadman, recognizes that this girl's doing a widow's trial because only a foreigner would do that. Now, I don't know how the fuck you would recognize that. This guy basically said, you know, she's an outsider, only an outsider would come and do this. Maybe that makes sense, but it just seems a bit too convenient to understand that this was a widow's trial just like that. He would have had to understood her thought process, which either way is just still really convenient. But he explains that this is going to fuck up the city because now people are going to start being complacent once they start getting food versus working for the food from before. Sarene comes in and no one's coming to get the food, so she calls a meeting with the OGs in the city. Our main character is now one of those OGs. So Kurata, bald girl, some old man, and the main character come through, and she says, if you get your people to start eating this food, it'll make me look good on the outside and I'll start getting you all the shit you need. They look to the main character, who through her perspective goes by the name of Soul, and he says, alright, it's all good. She leaves, and on her way out she starts singing, yo, this Soul guy is pretty suspicious. I feel like I've recognized him before. Also very convenient. They have FaceTime before on the outside world, but it just felt very convenient to just be like, yo, I feel like I know this guy type thing. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just felt like that was super convenient. We get another chapter showing the priest and why he's still disheveled and how he doesn't really have motivation anymore. Dilaf, his little boy, who's now triple OG status on the outside world, has managed to basically sweep a lot of people under him. And Torelli, the guy who he promised the throne, is talking to him, and he says, yo, like, the fuck is going on? Now that Sarene is feeding these people, where's the hate gonna be from? There's not gonna be enough to take advantage of, and now he won't even be able to be king. Priest says, yo, shut the fuck up, I got you, just chill out. Torelli's cheesed, so he decides to drop him off halfway home and says, walk the rest, you little bitch. So the priest walks home and he's depressed and he's thinking to himself, like, fuck, like, what am I even doing? Really like this chapter too. I really like these chapters where, you know, we see a more introspective perspective to these characters and why they are the way they are. Priest chapters towards the end of this half, all fire. So here's another chapter by Roadman, which I don't really know shit about what happened here. One second I was reading it and I see, you know, him taking the food from Sarene as she's coming in to go do her widow's trial over and over again. She's bringing food in, and next second I know these guys are throwing some old man in the water. So I reread this shit 3 times, and from what I understood, there was some realization that this old man, who I don't even remember, has been talking about how he used to be an old Elantrian, and that there's this body of water that you throw someone in and they move on to the next life. And they threw this old man in the water and this guy disappeared. This guy turned to acid or some shit. So they picked up this old man and threw him in the water. And honestly, this chapter I didn't really fuck with, for obvious reasons. I had to read this shit 3 times just to understand it. But my main problem with this was that, you know, in most stories, when there's some sort of revelation, it feels rewarding when you could have piece the puzzle together earlier on. Like, for example, if there was a twist and you had the elements to understand what was gonna happen, it's really effective. But in this situation, you have the elements, but they're so insignificant that you'll never even remember them. And normally when I see a twist like this or a revelation like this, it's supposed to give you that oh shit feeling. But this, I was just like, okay, that's sick, moving on. It just wasn't enough of a good twist to make me go, or a good revelation to make me really, you know, get taken aback. Personally, that was my problem with it, but maybe I missed something. Maybe I just need to reread it. But off of my first impression of it, I thought Revelation should be more effective than this. So then we get to Sarene's chapter, and all she really realizes is that the soul guy is super familiar. Again, the soul guy is the guy she used to FaceTime on the outside world, who she was in love with, or not in love with, who she was supposed to get married to, died. Our other main character, Roadman. She's like, I know this guy. Other than that though, another thing that happens in this chapter is that the king's bank gets saved. Because of her, the king is still going to be king because he made enough money. We know that fucks with the priest. We know that fucks with the priest's goal, and as a result, we get the priest chapter after. He realizes he's fucked, and that, you know, the king's okay, and he won't be able to put Torelli on the throne. And then the poison comes through via Amazon Prime. And this guy decides to take the poison. Now, I was confused as fuck because our main character, one of our main characters, decides to poison himself. The poison doesn't work right away. He has 8 hours before it works. So either he's gonna use that to his advantage and just go out and just fuck this whole city over, or he's got something in plan. And that's where the halfway point of the story ended. So overall, I really like the priest and Sarene's perspective. Raoden was just too convenient for me. It just felt like everything was so convenient. All the shit that's happening is just too well placed. It just doesn't make sense to me. Other than that, Sarene was very likable. I really liked her character. She was ambitious, which is a good trait to see in a female character. She was doing a lot of shit, and she wasn't fucking up. She was doing a lot of shit and she was doing interesting shit. She got the girls to start fencing, started to finesse all these people, and she had started to get in the way of this hate that was going to be driven towards Elantrians. All really interesting shit. The priest was my personal favorite perspective, because all the shit he talked about throughout the whole story up till now was really, really engaging. Really, really interesting to see someone believe in something that they don't really believe in, or worship something they don't really believe in, which is actually a lot more common than people think. I know so many people that don't really I know so many people that are part of a religion that don't really fuck with that religion, but they just say that they are because it's easier to just say that than to be like, I changed. You know what I mean? Really interesting though. And next week I'm gonna be doing, overall, I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was amazing. You know what I mean? I feel like the first half was interesting, but it was so slow in certain perspectives. Obviously, I'm reading it, so it's summarizing shit. But even just reading it, I'm sure some people were like, this sounds so slow, or this sounds dull in this section. But that's just how the story was. Though I didn't like a lot of the first half, I did start to see it pick up towards the end. Normally in stories though, the first sections are usually the most boring ones, so I understand that. But we'll see how it goes from here. I do have some hope for this because my friend said this book was actually a lot better than what people considered it. I also know that people's debut books don't tend to be as well done as their future books. So this is Brandon Sanderson's debut, so I had taken it with a grain of salt. I did get, that this wasn't going to be his best work. But in 2 weeks from now, hopefully I'll be getting to his best work. Next week, I'm going to be finishing Elantris on Friday. And the week after that, I'm going to start either the Mistborn series or the Warbreaker series. I'm not really sure where to continue after this, but everyone says to go to the Mistborn. We'll see though. So these go up every Friday and there'll be a schedule in the description. So if you fucked with this, stick around. I'll be doing more of Brandon Sanderson shit. Along with that, go to the person who really did this 100% blind shit. Totally Not Mark did 100% blind for One Piece, and it's a beautiful series. If you haven't watched it, you should check it out. Other than that, if there's any criticism that anyone has or feedback that I can take from it, just put it in the comment section. And yeah, that's basically it.